the Baen Free Radio Hour.
On the podcast, new perfume made from the broken flowers of innocence from the garden of good and evil goes bad and accidentally restores the virtue of 57 miscreants. Expositionary lumps and cave-dwelling albino hiders. Plus, we continue with the complete audiobook serialization of Alliance of Equals by Sharon Lee and Steve Miller. All right now. Welcome to the Baen Free Radio Hour podcast. It's an honor to have you along. I'm Baen editor Tony Daniel. We continue with our series On the Road, and this time we have an interview with Larry Correia, conducted at the Book Expo America in New York City. Larry talks about his upcoming new entry in the Monster Hunter series, which is called Monster Hunter Siege. That will be book 8 in the mainline series. We also discuss many more upcoming exciting Larry Correia projects and Monster Hunter projects. So that is coming up. Plus, we continue with the complete audiobook serialization of Alliance of Equals, a Liaden Universe novel by Sharon Lee and Steve Miller. Now here's the news. June is a very exciting month, and one reason is because our new hardcover by Robert Conroy and J.R. Dunn is out. This is the alternate history set during the American Civil War, the day after Gettysburg. Bob Conroy was about 65 to 75% done with the book the day after Gettysburg when he died unexpectedly, and with the support of Diane Conroy, his widow, we asked longtime Conroy copy editor and science fiction writer and political essayist J.R. Dunn to finish the book. We think he did a marvelous job, and now The Day After Gettysburg is available at booksellers everywhere. Lee strikes back. After a terrible setback at Gettysburg, Robert E. Lee does not retreat across the Potomac and his ultimate surrender at Appomattox. Instead, he turns the tables on Union General George Meade with a vicious counterattack that sets the Union Army on its heels. While Lee sets out across Pennsylvania in a dazzling war of maneuver, a crazed actor closes in on President Lincoln. Standing in his way is Major Steve Thorne, a thoughtful lawyer-turned-soldier fighting for the Union and his own self-respect, and Cassandra Baird, a young woman whose courage is only surpassed by her determination to teach emancipated slaves to read and write and to ensure their freedom. Opposing them is Colonel Corey Wade, a brave Confederate officer who is just as determined to fight to the death for his honor and that of his state. And in the end, the fate of a nation may come down to a freed slave named Hadrian, a man with an iron resolve never to return to bondage. The time has come to strike a blow for liberty or go down swinging. The Day After Gettysburg by Robert Conroy and J.R. Dunn is now available at booksellers everywhere. Hey, I want to welcome Larry Correia to the podcast. Hi, Larry.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Tony.
Hey, we're at the BEA in New York City, which is the Book Expo America, and it happens once a year here, and it's sort of the publishing Disneyland. All the publishers and many booksellers come here and authors sign, and Larry's here. He has signed his new book, which is Monster Hunter Siege. Of course, everyone should know that Larry is the creator of the Monster Hunter series and the Hard Magic series as well, which is the Chronicles of Grimnoir, and many other things. And if you are anything of a Baen reader, you know his work well. So, Larry, what's going on around here? Isn't this it's quite a madhouse at the BEA sometimes. This is smaller than before, though.
Yeah, it's for those of you that have never been, it's a great big conference center. It's the Javits Center in New York City, and there's like thousands of librarians and booksellers and people looking for swag and free books.
Yeah. Do you you've been here 3 times, third time, or is it?
I think this is my 4th one. Yeah, my first one was back in I want to say 2012.
Well, we always like to have you here to draw, to be the counter programming to the rest of the New York stuff.
Yeah, I guess that Hillary Clinton is speaking later tonight.
Directly opposite of your reception.
Yeah, I don't think I'm really going to draw too much from that crowd. And then also the Al Franken is here speaking. So apparently I'm the not really my normal crowd.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're needed. You're needed. It's like a missionary gone to, St. Patrick going to Ireland. You need to kill some snakes too, like.
It's actually probably pretty good that I have an event opposite of Hillary, because I'm pretty sure otherwise the Secret Service would ask me to leave.
We're here signing copies of Monster Hunter Siege. Tell us about what's going on in the Monster Hunter series. I haven't read this one quite yet. I'm usually pretty prepared with some questions about these things, but I have a feeling that some monsters get killed and there's some dire circumstances that our monster hunters get into that seem like they can't possibly survive, and yet they do somehow.
Well, actually, this time I figured I would just go with non-violent conflict resolution, and they just kind of.
Gonna love it. We'll give her a sign.
Yeah, this time Monster International, they just decided to talk it out, and there's some aromatherapy, and
in fact, it's a scratch and sniff cover, I think.
Yeah, smells of lilacs and shame. It's Monster Hunter picks up right after Nemesis. It's about they finally get to meet the big bad enemy that I've been teasing for the last couple books.
Is this Owen?
Yeah,
is it a first person?
Yeah, this is another first person book. It's back to Owen's perspective. So it's a lot of fun. This time they actually put together the biggest mission in Monster Hunter International's history. They team up with a bunch of other companies and go to a foreign country. I don't want to give too much away, but it's just this great big expedition. That's where the siege comes from. And it's pretty awesome. And so the first part of it's kind of a big team book. And then the second part of the book is Owen kind of stuck on his own. And it's pretty awesome.
Does Earl show up in this one, or is he?
Yeah, in fact, there's a bunch of Earl, but it's not really particularly an Earl solo book, so it's more Earl as the leader. At one point, we have the training camp up in Alaska. It's referred to as Earl Harbinger's Day Camp for Wayward Youth. It's pretty fun. It's pretty awesome.
So this is who could be the ultimate bad guy? What has gone before? What about, like, Frank's is from this demon dimension, right?
Yeah. So Frank's though is technically a good guy. He's actually winds up as the series goes on working directly for God, which is really ironic if you know anything about Frank's. And then
so he would probably know who the bad guy is.
Oh yeah. Yeah, this bad guy, what I did, this is an ancient evil, basically Lord of Chaos.
Oh, good.
Which I had a lot of fun with because he's not what the Monster Hunters expect. They kind of go in expecting a big Godzilla-style roar monster smash kind of thing, and instead they get a guy who's very sneaky, very tricky, very intelligent, but he's a god of chaos. His name literally means disorder, and he just basically unorganizes the universe is kind of his ultimate goal.
Wow, that's cool magic.
Yeah, it's actually pretty. It's
scary.
It's pretty bleak actually, because his ultimate goal is to just ruin everything. That's what he exists for. That's his entire purpose in the universe.
Did you name him Bummer? The Lord Bummer didn't know.
No, they call him many unpleasant things, of course, because it's Monster Hunters we're talking about. But
so what does Owen go through? Where's Owen's personal life here? He's married.
Well, this one when we last saw Owen and Julie, really at Nemesis, but then in Legion, they're married. Julie's pregnant. Surprise. They weren't expecting that. And so as this book goes on, it's actually, so Julie's pregnant during this, and she's going to wind up having the baby, but it's during this big mission, so she doesn't get to participate, which actually really sucks for her, so she has to kind of stay home and run things. But the whole next book is actually, the next planned book in the series is called Monster Hunter Guardian, co-written with Sarah Hoyt, and it's actually a Julie book. It's a solo Julie book. Kind of like Nemesis was a Frank's book and Alpha was an Earl book.
Yeah, that's cool. So she'll be dealing with things back home. That
yeah, and then
is it coterminous with this, like the same?
It
time?
is, and in fact, it's kind of funny because Siege ends. People are calling it a cliffhanger. It's not really a cliffhanger because this story is resolved, but other events occur while Owen is not there. And people are like, well, why don't you resolve that? Well, because the resolution of those events is a whole other book. I mean, that's the whole point. And so, yeah, Guardian overlaps Siege in the timeline.
Okay, well, that's cool. The who else will we see from the past? Are the Shacklefords still around? They are, right?
Oh, yeah. So, that they're not in this one a ton, but the boss is in it a little bit, and he's actually got a part in Guardian too. But I can't really say too much about that yet.
That god-awful guy that works for the government, he got taken out, though.
Oh, yeah. No spoilers. I don't want to give anything away to anyone who hasn't read Nemesis yet, but yeah. One of my greatest achievements as a writer is I love when I take a character and everyone hates him, but then I make you cry when I kill him.
Yeah.
That's when I know I'm doing my job.
Yeah. Well, he had a great backstory, as I recall.
Oh, yeah, he was...
kind of feel bad for him.
He was awesome, actually. He's a great character.
Really,
well, he was a dick, but he was a dick for a reason.
yeah.
He was a dick on a mission, so he was...
Dick on him.
Yeah, he was one of the... He was a very hard-working government employee.
Well, yeah, and he really screwed with Earl.
Oh, yeah, those two hated each other, actually. There was a lot of personal animosity between those two.
So what are... Monster Hunter books often have cool weapons, for some reason, or another.
Well, this one I got to have fun because actually... I was approached, because in this next book, in Siege, I had to have a part where Owen was using a long-range rifle, because he couldn't just use his regular Abomination, because it's just a short-range gun. And so I needed a precision rifle, and at the same time period, I got approached by JP Enterprises, who wanted to build a signature Monster Hunter gun. So what we actually did is
This is real life.
This is real life. This is real life. So we actually built Owen's gun, exactly. And they sell it. It's called the Cazador. The JP Enterprises Cazador.
Cazador is the place in Alabama where they're...
Yeah, that's their hometown.
Yeah.
And so we have the JP Cazador is it's a $4,000 rifle. It's
Nice.
It's very nice. Yes, I got number 1 was mine. It's pretty amazing actually.
I mean, as a gun guy from way back, that must feel really good.
Oh gosh, yeah. As a gun nut, when you start having really cool companies making fictional guns from your books, it's kind of amazing. I'll be honest. It's a great rifle though. Oh yeah. I'm taking it in October to a. They're doing a long-range rifle class, a long-range precision rifle class, just for me and my fans.
Hey, that's cool. Up there at their headquarters?
No, actually, New Mexico.
Oh, okay.
There's not really a lot of places in Minnesota where you can shoot 1,000 yards. So we're going down to New Mexico, and it's going to be pretty fun. It's on the website. I don't know if it's filled up yet, but it's just a bunch of me and my gun nut fans going out, getting some high-quality instruction.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah, how many writers do crap like that? I mean, I'm...
not many at the BEA.
Oh, no. Yeah, I don't know about you, but I feel a little awkward here. My pants feel a little loose without a gun inside. It's,
Yeah, are you sure you didn't bring one? Yeah, I guess.
No, it's New York City. I don't want to go to prison for a million years per bullet or whatever it is here.
I always pack quite a big knife to bring to New York, in my check.
See, I flew with just a carry-on, so I'm just going to have to rely upon my charming personality and...
Well, you're a big guy.
300 pounds of body weight.
Yeah. You're an imposing guy. I don't have that.
Basically, if anybody mugs me, I'm just assuming they're on a psychotic break and things are not going to go well anyway. Because, I mean, either that or they're really bad at target selection, so then there's got to be somebody better.
So what else is going on in the Monster Hunter universe? I know that the collection's coming out with the other people, an anthology.
Yeah.
That others have written Monster Hunter stories for, including Jim Butcher.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Who else? You told me some great names.
Yeah, so it comes out in, I want to say, October of this year. So Siege is August. The anthology is October. It was co-edited by me and Brian Thomas Schmidt. And we got authors, as far as New York Times bestsellers go, we got Jim Butcher, Faith Hunter, Jessica Day George, Jonathan Mayberry, John Ringo, and I'm going to kick myself because I'm probably forgetting another one there. We got a ton of great authors in this. We got, let's see, we got Quincy Allen, Maurice Broadus, Mike Coopery, Brad Torgerson. We got some new authors, Kim May. Oh my gosh, I know I'm forgetting people. But yeah, it's
we'll talk
excellent.
more about this when it comes out for sure.
It's really awesome, though, because it's just a whole bunch of different authors with the different...
How did you go about deciding who wrote what for that anthology?
Oh, so that was kind of fun. So right out the gate, we decided we're going to do this an anthology. Normally with an anthology, you would then put out a call for submissions for authors. But with this, you know, kind of being a very specialized thing, we didn't actually ever put out a call for submission. We just approached people that we knew. And my criteria was I was trying to find people who knew the world, were already fans of the books, or were at least I knew were familiar with the books, who I knew were good writers. And so we just kind of went down the list and picked people we thought were cool. Some of the new authors, I hadn't read their work, but Brian had worked with them, and so he knew them from editing, like Kim and Quincy. I had not read their stuff. Alex Schwarzman's in there. I hadn't read his stuff.
Okay, so we're putting out a collection he put together of humorous Cthulhu books, Cthulhu stories, by the way. It's got a great surfing Elvis Cthulhu.
Oh, nice.
Anyway.
Yeah, no, so we got some really good authors. I mean, the ones I was really excited for, because I was fans of their works, was getting a Jim Butcher story in there. I just totally nerded out. They have Jim Wright, Monster Hunter. Jonathan Mayberry wrote Frank's.
It's not like a little short vignette.
His actually, because we had like a maximum story size, and Jim like came in way over that. But this is Jim, so you know, when you are one of the best-selling fantasy authors alive, and you want to run over, you just let him.
Yeah,
it's an awesome story.
Great storyteller. Yeah.
Jonathan Mayberry wrote a Frank story, Agent Franks in World War II. It's Agent Franks versus Nazis.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh my gosh,
Franks
it is so awesome.
It's got to be fun to write.
Because I've actually teamed up with Jonathan before. We did some crossovers where I've written in his Joe Ledger universe, and he's written in the Monster Hunter universe, and we did a team-up story where he wrote Joe Ledger and I wrote Agent Franks, and we put them together. And actually, ever since then, Jonathan writes Agent Franks better than anybody but me. I mean, he really writes Franks well. And so that was a lot of fun. And Faith Hunter did a crossover story with her Skinwalker series, or with Jane Yellowrock, and it was awesome. Jessica Day George, who writes action-adventure, humorous princess novels, did Trailer Park Elves versus Gnomes Turf War.
Your Trailer Park Elves are just... And your gnomes, man.
Oh, gnomes.
Little kick-ass little
Gnomes will mess you up, man. They don't mess around.
So what in Siege what monsters do we encounter that other than the big bad guy? Are we? I hope I gets to kill a lot.
Okay, so this one I actually had a lot of fun with, because it's set in primarily in Russia, northern Russia, and so I get to draw early on in a couple like folklore creatures that I hadn't really seen before in the Western world. So at one point we had a great scene involving a Vodyanoi frog man creature, who's taken up residence in an abandoned public pool, and it's resolved through judicious use of a sledgehammer. Great scene.
Frogs are scary to me. Not many things are scary, but frogs really get to me. I'm gonna have to.
Yeah, this is gross.
When I'm reading.
We do, and then we do this other thing. We actually, first time in the series, I involve a giant, which is pretty cool, because we have a giant versus a tank.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so we didn't mess around with the giant. We actually just shot it with a T-72.
It's like the Indiana Jones scene.
It was. Even then though, it's a giant. You don't mess around. So shooting with the main gun of a T-72 is like shooting a regular dude with a 9mm. So it still took a while. Let's see. We actually got into a couple. I introduced a kind of a race of creatures that were based on some ancient Assyrian folklore, a little obscure, but I needed a race of underground, basically albino mutants that got pretty cool. I mean, we got some pretty cool stuff in there. Kind of like cannibal mutants, and that was fun.
They live underground.
Oh, yeah, and they're nasty. And they're violent and psychotic. And then when they show up with guns, it's just great.
So did you have to determine buffs on these?
It's funny because a lot of that I hand wave. It's in the background. It's just when Owen's doing paperwork.
Yeah.
So I try not to nail down prices too much. The only time I've ever done that specifically is when we did the role-playing game. And so for that, because, role-playing gamers, they need to know all that information. GMs, they need to know all that information that you just don't bother to put in the books.
Yeah.
So I'm sure in future editions of that, because we're going to do a Savage Worlds version of that this year. But, yeah, there's... I think about this a bit.
Well, this one of the main drivers of the books is the fact that these monster hunters do this in order to collect bounties, oftentimes, although they just kind of love their jobs too.
Oh, yeah.
And they get paid for and it's a rising scale depending on how hard things are, right?
It's all supply and demand, basically. The harder it is to kill and the more dangerous it is, the more money it's worth.
Yeah.
But also then the more likely you are to die in the process of
Yes. Well, that's cool. All right, so we've got albino mutant underground creatures, probably made of fungus or something. I don't know.
They're made of meanness.
Made of meanness. Yeah. That sounds cool. Any twist on traditional fantasy characters in this one, as you've sometimes done, or is it?
I try. I do that every book. So far I've done that with elves, gnomes, orcs, dragons, and a minotaur. But this one actually, yes, but I don't want to give it away.
Okay.
Because it's a new one.
Cool.
But I have a cyclops.
That's nice. You might have a tank needed for him as well.
No, actually, it's not what you expect. But
okay.
You've probably run into him at if you go to a lot of Comic Cons, you've probably run into him.
I see. That's cool. Excellent. So, also you are you're working on putting together a collection of your own stories, and it's going to be out next year, 2018 at some point.
Yeah, it's called Target Rich Environment. I'm really super proud of this one. It's going to be awesome. I've written a ton of short fiction, and a lot of my Baen fans don't realize it because it appeared in anthologies all over the place. Some of it appeared originally through Baen, other times it appeared just indie places. And it also got some original fiction in there. And I was bundling all this up, and I realized I had like 200,000 words of short stories. So Tony decided to go ahead and cut that in half, and so we're going to do 2 volumes. So the first one, it's got some great stories in it. Some of my favorite things I've ever written that I'm really excited because a lot of people haven't seen them.
You're a short story writer.
Thank you.
Well, not every novelist is a good short story writer.
Yeah, because I have a rep as a novelist, but a lot of people don't realize I really enjoy short stories. I get to do a lot of weird stuff that I wouldn't want to stick with for a whole novel. Mm-hmm. I have a couple horror stories in there, and I can't do horror novels because I'm too upbeat. And I tend to write characters that aren't good horror novel characters because they want to fight back too much. So I was able to do some horror, and I do horror pretty well, actually. And I got some in there that I'm really proud of. And I got some straight-up epic fantasy stories. I've got some of the War Machine stories I've done in there, some straight-up just Dungeons and Dragons stories. I've got a little bit of everything.
What is that press in Seattle that you've done books for?
Privateer Press. Yeah. They do the War Machine game. And
we now have their books, and your books that came out at the ebooks on the Baen eBooks site, by the way.
Oh yeah, and I recommend it for like regular Baen readers if they've not read those. They're really good, and you don't need to know the game to enjoy the books.
What are the names of the books?
The first one's called Into the Storm, and it's kind of I think steampunk Magic Knights Dirty Dozen, and so it's just a group of it's pretty awesome actually. So they're like a bunch of dregs of this knightly order. They're like the losers, the criminals, the dirtbags. Yeah. And guys but it's leading up to a big war, so it's guys they pull out of the brig, and they throw them all in this one crappy unit, and they get this disgraced officer to lead them. Only the reason he's disgraced is he was too good at his job back during a military coup.
Sounds a lot like the Dirty Dozen with
it's
knights and...
It is. It's basically it's Dirty Dozen with mad science lightning swords, fighting giant steam-powered robots.
Sounds pretty cool.
I'm really proud of it. The second one's called Into the Wild. Same group of characters, but only this time it's in a different setting, fighting basically magical werewolves.
Well, they're now available as ebooks. In fact, we're going to we just went ahead and took all of Privateer Press's books, and we're putting them all up as ebooks as well.
Actually, they got a lot of really good books. I'm really glad to see you guys doing that.
Yeah. Well, we like making money, like anybody else. So,
I'm all in favor of anything that sells more of my books.
Well, I mean, a lot of people aren't aware that Baen Books is a retail site. We sell ebooks that are from many different publishers. Anybody that wants to distribute through us, we do. And our newest edition is Privateer Press. So that's cool. You also have a story coming up in Michael Z. Williamson's Freehold Anthology.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a really good story in itself. I think it's a really strong story in that anthology. You have an old Shaolin,
old grumpy Ronin samurai.
Yeah.
He's because it was for Freehold.
He's very cynical about samurai-ness.
It's funny because I get drafted for being a Portuguese guy. I get drafted to write a lot of samurai stuff because I mean I'm pretty good.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean I love samurai movies, and I came up on that, and so I've got a talent. I got a talent for writing samurai. So when Mike did this this anthology, the premise was it was the main character's sword from hundreds of years in the future, but it's going to go back to the imperial.
It's like the red violin, but with a badass sword.
Yeah, so it goes back to I want to say 12th century Japan, and Zach Hill wrote a story, the story before mine. So I read Zach's, and I got a feel for the family it came from, because my job was to then skip ahead to the Oda Nobunaga era, and so I was writing this story, and so I based it. And Zach is a great writer. Zach passed away last year.
Yeah.
Well, a good friend of mine, wonderful guy. So I took Zach's characters, and the idea was that my guy was the great-great-great-grandson of his character. And then I wrote it and had a lot of fun with it. Just kind of wrote a real Toshiro Mifune, semi-retired badass who just wants to be left alone. Plus, it's Freehold, so I wanted to touch on that whole kind of libertarian mindset, but in a world where people are basically property. With the concept of individual rights was totally foreign in this world. So this guy just wants to be left alone. And they don't
really have that feel of the Mifune, the samurai films, the Japanese samurai.
He is a grumpy old bastard. But then Mike Massa writes this story after mine, this World War II. And so it just kind of skips ahead that far, and it's a pretty cool idea.
I have a story in that anthology as well.
Which time period did you get?
Right before Freehold.
Oh, cool.
And in fact, the next person to get the sword will be Kendra from Freehold.
So you're towards the end. Okay, I haven't read yours yet. I haven't seen that.
Yeah, I'm proud of it. I did a lot. I reread everything Mike had done so that I could really get a hand, because I had to set it in his universe.
Well, because it's a great series.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's wonderful to get to go back through it again. So I was in the zone when I was writing that. I had a lot of its world in my mind, and I'm proud of what I did.
Cool. I'm excited to read that one.
It'll be great.
When does that come out? When is Forged?
It will be August.
August. Excellent.
Yeah. So Forged in Blood is the name. Freehold Forged in Blood is the name of that anthology.
Yeah, I'm actually really pumped for that one.
And Siege, by the way, the reason we're at BEA is because we're signing advanced reader copies for Siege. Monster Hunter Siege will be out in August. Right?
Yes. Yes.
And so that's when it'll be available. But the eArt, this program where we sell the tainted, I wouldn't sell, maybe not tainted, the beginning part of the process where it's been copy edited but not proofread yet. We'll sell those online for people that just cannot wait to read the next entry in the series. That will be available very soon. It will be up. It may be already up. I think it is actually. Well,
people always ask me how close is the eArc to the final. Honestly, mine have been pretty close.
Yeah. Well, you turn in pretty clean copy.
I'm not one of the hard ones to edit. I don't think.
Almost all of the eArcs are done books, but they've been copy edited. But there's a lot of little.
Oh, in the eArc though, I did make a gun mistake.
Oh dear.
Yes, I slipped through. I screwed up. I even knew the right answer when I wrote it, but for whatever reason, my brain filled in the wrong word.
Yeah.
I screwed up a gun thing, and I won't even tell you guys what it is. You'll just have to see if the eArc readers are smart enough to catch it, but it's fixed in the final.
Which book is it? It's in Siege.
It's in Siege.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I screwed up.
That is, you know what we'll do? We will run that as a contest to give away a free Siege. for our August contest. If you can find it, we'll give you the...
What gun thing did Larry screw up?
Larry's personally signed. He'll sign the page.
I mean, I could even make an excuse and say that the character speaking just had a fumble. He said the wrong thing. It wasn't me.
I'm sure that's.
I was in character. It was in character.
Well, that's good to know. That's a reason to read it in itself.
Yeah, I don't make gun errors very often. Sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of guns in those books.
Oh yeah. It's funny too because I get these guys who are professional traders well, why does so and so have such and such? Well, because he's not you and he has different opinions and he doesn't know everything.
How do you handle that because there is nothing like gun nuts arguing about pros and cons of things unless it's science fiction people. Yeah.
Well, see, there's one thing that kind of gets me, and so at one point I have this one character, Trip, who I very specifically point out repeatedly he's not a gun nut. And a couple times he uses a handgun that's not super reliable, and another time he uses a submachine gun that's not known for being super reliable. And people are like, well, those aren't very good. And I was like, yeah, but do you notice the character whose hands I put them into?
Yeah.
I mean, come on, guys. I think this stuff through. Give me some credit.
Well, yeah. That's just some people just like to...
people cherry pick.
The readers have different motivations for reading, and whatever they are, we want to satisfy them.
It's the nature of the beast. No worries, honestly.
Yeah.
I know. I've had some screw ups, but a lot of times people don't catch them. Thankfully, as long as I entertain people, I can get away with
very few
things.
writers who got as much right as you.
Yeah, gun stuff I try. I have actually screwed up some martial arts stuff at one point because Owen knows more about fighting than I do, and so. I've had that character make mistakes that he shouldn't have. But that's more because me, the writer, I'm not a martial artist by any means. I mean, I know a little bit, but that's not my area of expertise. But I have dropped the ball there before.
Oh, well.
99.9% of readers don't catch it, though.
Yeah, well, he still kicks ass, no matter what. So the book is Monster Hunter Siege, and it'll be out in August. The e-arc will be available, if it's not already, at BaenBooks.com right now.
Yeah, it's available.
The 8th book in the series?
6th in the series, but we got the Ringo spin-off novel, so it's actually, the 9th with Ringo Books. Cool.
So, Larry, thanks for taking time out of the Liberal Fest here.
Well, my pleasure. I think we're going to go sneak out now and eat some Thai food because, one thing I will say about Manhattan is the food is amazing.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, thanks a lot.
All right. Thanks, Tony.
This is another entry in Alliance of Equals, a Liaden Universe novel by Sharon Lee and Steve Miller. Beset by the angry remnants of the Department of the Interior, and challenged at every turn by opportunists on their new homeworld of Surebleak, and low on funds, Clan Corval desperately needs to reestablish its position as one of the top trading clans in known space. To this end, Master Trader Shawn Yoskalen and Corval's premier trade ship Dutiful Passage is on a mission to establish new business associations and to build a strong primary route that links well with existing loops and secondary routes. But reestablishing trade and preserving the lives of the few remaining members of the clan aren't all of Corval's problem. Matters come to a head as Dutiful Passage, accustomed to being welcomed and feted at those ports on its call list, finds itself denied docking and blacklisting while agents of the DOI mount armed attacks on others of Corval's traders under the very eyes of port security systems. Traveling with Dutiful Trader on this unsettling journey is Paddy Yoskalen, the master trader's heir and his apprentice. Paddy is eager to make up for time lost due to Corval's unpleasantness with the Department of the Interior, but she is also keeping a secret so intense that her coming of age and perhaps her very life is threatened by it. And here is the latest entry in Sharon Lee and Steve Miller's Alliance of Equals.
Chapter 3 Dutiful Passage. In addition to her duties as librarian and cultural officer, Lena Faldum served the ship as a healer. Paddy had been in the habit of considering her a sensible woman. The information that she was master of a dance as trivial, as purposeless, as débriat had come as a shock. But there, Quinn was mostly quite sensible, wasn't he? And didn't he, regardless, spend time better used for reading or for exercising, threading beads along wires and chains? Some of his creations were quite pretty, and could at least be given as gifts and worn. And some cachet accrued to the creator when others willingly wore his handmade trifles, even if the stones were semi-precious at best. By contrast, this débriat left no residual that might benefit one or one's acquaintanceship. Of course, when one danced menfriat, there was no immediate benefit, saving that gained through exercise. The real benefits became apparent when one was set upon by brigands and obliged to defend oneself or one's comrades. The aim of débriat, as far as Paddy could divine, was to look pretty. In short, she thought, moving briskly down the hall toward her class with Master Faldum, débriat was a waste of her time. She did, however, have her orders and her schedule, which was why she was on her way to one of the smaller practice rooms. It had occurred to her, while she showered, that the case of Lena Faldum being a healer might not be an accident. Father might well have asked a colleague for an evaluation of his daughter's proclivities and talents. After all, Father clearly expected her to come healer. Perhaps he even wished for his heir to share his talent. One didn't like to disappoint Father, of course, but no, she was not a healer. It was simply not possible. However, the more she considered the notion that Lena Faldum had been asked to provide a second opinion, the more she believed that she would find herself a class of one for débriat, which had the effect of lifting her spirits somewhat as she came nearer the practice room. After all, if débriat practice was a mere subterfuge, then she would be back dancing menfriat at her proper level within a shift or two. That thought cheered her so much that she was nearly dancing, in fact, when she reached her destination and put her hand against the plate. The door whisked open, and her mood crashed, from bright cheerfulness to dark despair. For she was not Lena Faldum's only student in the dance of débriat. There were 5 others in the room ahead of her, and one of them was Arms Master Schneider. Sean tapped the keypad and reached for his glass. His first glance at the messages in queue failed to discover the words Terran Trade Commission. It was beginning to be worrisome, this lack of communication from the Terran Trade Commission. He had initially considered it a positive sign that the honored members of the rating committee hadn't laughed in his face or issued a flat no on the spot, but had rather promised to take the matter of upgrading Surebleak Port's rating under advisement, review the files he had provided, and contact him with their ruling in 3 standard months. As that date came ever more near, he was beginning to suspect that their unusual agreeableness had been nothing more than a stall. Well, he closed his eyes and indulged himself with a few deep, calming breaths before opening his eyes to consider his message queue again. Carisens Denobly. He blinked, touched the access key, and eased back into his chair's embrace, his eyes still on the screen, and a communication he had never thought to see during his career as a master trader. In short, he was looking at a working memo from the Carisens Syndicate, under the signature of one Jennifer Carasens de Nobly, trader at large. Trader Carasens de Nobly styled the memo a first exchange of thoughts. He confessed that he had only just begun thinking of Surebleak as a port of potential interest to the syndicate, and thus his first thoughts were necessarily incomplete. Other matters will doubtless occur to each as we discuss this in more depth, trader and trader. I offer here, as my first thoughts, a loop that accommodates Surebleak and also Ashlan, which is an anchor port for 3 Carasens long loopers and many others of the small loop ships. I am thinking, too, of Nomi Oxen Rude, which is something much on the lines of Surebleak. There is potential, but nothing that would tie it into existing routes. If there were to be a new loop, perhaps a hybrid loop, though I have not thought deeply on this, it may be that the potentials of Surebleak and Nomi Oxen Rude may be realized to the mutual benefit of traders. I append a list of such cargoes as might be of interest to Ashlan and Nomi Oxen Rude, for which I have some information. Also, I append a list of those cargoes which are standard on Carasen's ships in our loops which now exist. Of very great interest to me is information regarding those items which might find favor with the traders of Surebleak, and also perhaps an indication of specialty items which might show well in the Festivalia, and so open up the mind of the wider universe to Surebleak. I await in lively anticipation your first thoughts regarding this enterprise, which may be directed to me at the beam code below. Sealed by the hand and will of Jennifer Carasens de Nobly. Carefully, Sharon set his glass aside. Of the several names he had given to Theo as possible contacts along the exploratory loop he had launched her upon, of those several contacts, he had supposed from the beginning that the Carasens would roundly ignore Corval's overture and their ambassador. The Carasens, after all, had no need of outside trade arrangements. They were complete in their trade family and their vast, intersecting network of loops, and felt no need to expand their range or change their methods. Until, apparently, now. He tapped up a new screen and filed a query for Jennifer Carasens de Nobly, then flipped back to reread the good trader's first thoughts and open the appended lists. They were remarkably complete lists for mere first thoughts. One might almost wonder if the Carasens, or if this particular Carasens, had been expecting contact from Corval. The list of the trade goods commonly carried by Carasen's ships made for fascinating reading, revealing as it did quite a bit regarding the nature of the Carasen's loop and long-time trade worlds. Sharon drew a careful breath. What in the name of the gods had Theo said to the man? The console chimed then, and he flipped back to the research screen, learning in very short order that Jennifer Carasens de Nobly not only stood as one of the Carasens' 3 ranking traders, but was also a senior trade commissioner. The question changes, Sharon murmured, picking up his glass and draining what was left. This was no ordinary Carasen's trader. How had Theo gotten an interview with this person? But that was obvious, wasn't it? Her ship. Putting aside the fact of its sentience, the ship was an old ship with, let it be said, interesting lines. A ship that had been specifically built a very long time ago to be a long looper. Caravans and denobli would not yet have merged families and roots, Shawn thought, when Beshimo had been built. And if the present-day family members hadn't quite seen anything like those lines, rest assured that they had records. Almost definitely, they would have been in contact with the uncle, trade being one of his many hobbies. In fact, it wasn't at all unlikely that the Caravans or the denoblis, either or both, had invested in the building of Beshimo many standard years ago. So then, Theo wins an interview with a high-ranking Caravans trader because of her ship. The Caravans might even be excused for thinking that the ship was a message. And so one of the 3 Caravans elders set himself to explore just what, precisely, that message might be, and if it was to the benefit of the Caravans. Well, how novel, how exciting. He would have to consider carefully and offer Trader Caravans and his syndicate as fully realized first thoughts as he had been offered. Surely there was profit to be made for all. They only needed to work out the details. And here arrives a new practitioner of our art, Lena Faldum said, as Paddy stepped into the room, the door falling closed behind her. "Join us, please." Paddy slipped her boots off and moved 6 steps across the soft floor, bowed to the master's honor, and straightened to meet a straight, honey-brown gaze. Lena Faldum was very slight and somewhat shorter than Paddy, who, after all, came from a clan known for the height of its members. She seemed to project, perhaps being a healer, she did project, a cool serenity that put Paddy immediately on her mettle. She was here to take a lesson, not a nap. The master was seen, perhaps, to smile before she inclined her sleek head. "Please, allow us to know your name," she said, and raised a hand slightly, as if to restrain Paddy's enthusiasm. "Here we are all students. Therefore, we share call names only." "Yes," Paddy murmured, and bowed to the 5 who stood patiently in a semicircle before the master. "I am Paddy." The student closest to her, who she thought worked in the cafeteria, bowed. "Ryan." Next in line was Arms Master Schneider, who bowed and murmured, "John." Then a woman whose face bore the marks of many years. "Keslis." Then was Kaztar, with an outworld accent. Paddy thought him about Quinn's age, and she had certainly seen the next student, Brisalia, among the maintenance crew. "Lena," said Master Faldum in her cool voice. "Please, Paddy, take your place beside Ryan. You will want to have an arm's width or more between you. We stretch wide here." This was apparently a joke, greeted by several chuckles. Ryan grinned and obligingly stretched his arms out at shoulder height, giving Paddy her range. She nodded her thanks and took up a position beside, apart, and slightly behind him. "Good," Master Lena said. "As I have said, we are all students here. Some of us have been studying longer, but Debriat is a discipline which may be studied for a lifetime. The diligent student finding always some new facet to explore. The art has been described as a many-petaled flower. also as a multifaceted gem. And we come together, as students, to practice, each at our own level. As the eldest student of the art present, I often lead our practice. However, this is not always the case. Any one of us may lead a practice, and each of us will be asked to do so. She looked at them each, one by one, then said, "Since we have a new student among us today, who will explain our art?" "I will," said Briselia. Debriat focuses the student's attention on movement. It's inward turning. We pay attention to the movement and our mind's connection to our muscles instead of focusing on the results of our movement. As we do in Menfriat, Arms Master John added. "That is a useful contrast," Lena said. Menfriat is an outward-looking art. It acts upon others. Debriat is inward-looking. From it, we learn the intent of our movements. The intent of her movements? Patty thought. Surely when she kicked at a target or an assailant, she intended to connect, to disable the threat. What other intent? So, having described what is essentially indescribable, let us begin our practice. Please, find your center. Feet under hips, weight evenly distributed. We will bring our arms up until our palms touch over our heads. And we will take 4 complete breaths before lowering our arms to our sides. Patty was already centered. One thing Menfriat had taught her was to always be centered. You never knew, after all, when an attack might come, and raised her arms until her palms touched. Only then seeing that Lena and the rest were still in the process of raising their arms, slowly and deliberately. She slid a surreptitious glance at Ryan and saw his eyes half closed and his face wrapped in concentration, as if the process of centering himself and beginning this simple movement had triggered some deeper process. She looked to Lena again, seeing that her palms were now touching over her head, and watched as those 4 complete breaths were executed, as slow and as measured as a pilot might take them, in preparation for board rest. Then the arms came down as slowly, if not more slowly, than they had risen. Patty lowered hers as well, struggling to match the agonizingly slow pace, and found she was trembling and slightly sweaty by the time her fingers were pointing toward the floor again. Lena opened her eyes and smiled. Next, we will raise our arms, as we just did, and when we have completed 4 breaths, we will bend at the hips and bring our hands to the mat. Once again, the agonizingly slow rise of both arms. Patty grimly kept pace, pilot instincts, honed for precise, rapid action, abraded almost past bearing. At the top of the form, she breathed 4 complete breaths, hinged at the hip, and bent until her fingertips touched the mat. A drop of sweat plashed against the mat between her feet and her fingers. Patty breathed in, feeling her muscles shake with the need to move. Breathed out 4 times and came up again to her full height. "Excellent," said Lena. "Now, place your right foot ahead of your left on the mat. Bring your hands up as if you are holding a large ball immediately before your heart. Patty followed the form demonstrated, bearing down until her muscles ached, refusing to allow herself to snap into a series of kicks or to simply collapse cross-legged to the mat and have done. "Very good," Lena said, and smiled directly into Patty's eyes. "Now, breathe in and pivot from center, keeping your ball directly before your heart."
That was another entry in the complete audiobook serialization of Alliance of Equals by Sharon Lee and Steve Miller. And that's it for the podcast. I want to thank the folks at Simon & Schuster at the BEA for assistance in recording the interview, and thanks to podcast theme composer Ruth Judkowitz. And the howls and growls of a reformed werewolf choir singing from their transformation cells after a delicious dinner of moons over my hammy, as well as the rumble, grumble, thanks and praise of New York City, happy for his bringing a touch of sanity to her streets, to Larry Correia, creator of the Monster Hunter series. Please join us next time here at the hammering heart of science fiction and fantasy, and keep reaching for the stars.